Namaste! Welcome, Mary Jane Kasliner, Yoga Feng Shui Lifestyle Master. So welcome to this video today, and I am going to demonstrate a few asanas that I would like to discuss for the month of November. So for anyone that does follow me, you know that I'm also a Feng Shui master. And so within my yoga classes, I always infuse the energy of Feng Shui. In particular, I like to look at the archetype animals that enter each month. And this is based on a system known as 4 Pillars of Destiny or astrology. And so the month of November, in all of my classes, we've been following the archetype of the pig. And the pig is made up of 2 elements. The primary element is water, and the hidden stem, which basically means we're getting deeper into the pig, is the element of wood. So these 2 elements work in what we call a Shang cycle, so very nourishing to one another. And in terms of asanas, the focus then is to work through some water and wood meridians. So in particular, the urinary bladder, kidney, and liver and gallbladder. So what have we learned this month thus far with the pig archetype energy? Well, first, we discussed how it's positioned in a heavenly direction, in particular the northwest, which is the trigram of Qian. And so this heavenly guidance brought about strength and abundance. And with that strength and abundance, it basically worked its way into our own energetic fields. And in doing so, it opens us up to grace, or the 7th chakra, Shishishra. The energy of the pig that I discussed in the beginning of the month was very much about being close to Gaia, Mother Earth. So really back down into our roots, and hence why we open to grace, because the root and the crown are polar opposites, and so they synergistically work with one another. As we continue to progress through the month of November, we delved a bit deeper into the pig. So we began to enter the depths of the ocean, the deep waters. And as we entered into that, we basically moved into the original consciousness, the fullness of consciousness, or nature, which is behind all things. And so we entered into the infinite being, the cosmic mind, okay, the divine. And upon entering there, it was very obvious that what appeared to be little in our lives became much. The unknown became known. Doubt turned into belief. Illness into wellness and health. So it's as if we could actually see through the illusion and be able to discern the truth, the reality of all things, that there is abundance all around us that gives us this strength and this perseverance. Much of what the pig energy teaches us as the pig delves deep into the earth to find the treasures or food to nourish oneself. So this exploration of really persevering and digging down deep within to get into this fullness of consciousness. And then as we continue through November, as we're approaching towards the end of November, and in this system, it will really take us until about the first week of December before we fully have explored the energy of the pig. And so where we've been, where we're going. And so as we delve a little bit deeper into the pig, we open up that hidden stem, or that wood element. And so normally the element of wood rises up in the season of spring. So you might be asking yourself, well, why we're in November in the autumnal season, why would we have the element of wood? And so the answer is very simple, because all things go through a cycle in life, right, in the universe, from birth to growth to a waning of energy until it's actually withers away. And so in actuality, in November, the element of wood is birthing, right? So it's like a newborn baby, and so it needs care, meaning that we need to care, we need to go within, take that time to go within so that we can begin to nurture this new element of wood. And so you might say, well, what does wood represent? And so in nature, it represents the trees upon the earth, all of the vegetation upon the earth, and it's in this beautiful full growth. So it translates as growth and vitality, right? These new beginnings, to start anew. And so how does that all happen? Well, things need to release first. And so here we are in that autumnal season in November where this full release is happening. So we need to release now. Now is the time we need to release. What are we releasing? Well, if we look to nature, right, you can see the leaves have practically all come off the trees, so there's a release there. Some of the vegetation has completely withered away, right? Because that has to happen in order for these new shoots and this beautiful growth to happen in spring, for us to rise up. So we need to release now. What are we releasing? Those things that are old behaviors, those things that keep us entrenched into a stuck mode, right? And so part of that process of the release is to actually go with the flow. This will be very much of what we call liver chi. We need to be able to go with the flow, right? And flow is also water energy, right? That which is the greatest element of contained in the pig. And so part of going with the flow means that there are going to be challenges. There are going to be obstacles, right? And so the niyama that calls to mind is santosha. Santosha is finding that contentment even through the challenges, right? Because when we do that, we come out to the other side in the state of joy. That's where we're going, that transformation to that state of joy, right? But in that process, right, we have to be able to make good decisions, to discern. That's going to be what will be the gallbladder, right? It's that ability to digest, to discern, and make good decisions. And that calls to mind the niyama of tapas, which is really this fiery discipline, this perseverance. Here comes that pig again, persevering, digging down, right? Because when we do that with this fiery discipline, we are going to be able to find our greatest self, our truest self. And that's where we're going, right? So as we get into asanas here, let's look at some water asana first. So we'll take a look at what in Yang Yoga we'll call Upavista Konasana pose, or in Yin Yoga it's dragonfly. And so this pose, I'm just going to grab a block here so we can use it. You can use a blanket, you can roll it, you can place it underneath your sitting bones if you choose to elevate it a little bit more. That's going to give the pelvic tilt naturally to move forward. So in this pose, we're going to have a good range of motion into the hips and an external rotation of the hips here. And we're really going to be working very much of the kidney line here. We can get involved with the kidney line, which is going to work very much on the inner seam of the body. Think of the kidney chi working inside of the body and front of body. It actually lands to the base of the tongue, the root of the tongue. And so here, we're going to begin to walk it forward. And so you can take this wherever it feels right. You could take a block here. You could place it as a little bench. You can also take your block and use it as a bench on your sternum here and just lay in. If it's available, you can come all the way down and lay in here. So you really begin to work that energy here. So it really is up to you. And then I would invite you to really breathe through the meridian here. So it's really going to kind of hook from the pinky toe over what we call the K1 spot on the inner arch and work its way right through the inner seam. So you're really going to feel a conversation on the inner seams of your legs here. And so breathe through that. See it as working through the watery depths of the ocean and clearing that meridian out, okay? And so our kidney chi is very much referred to as the Jing, or our physical constitution in Chinese medicine. And it really connects us to our ancestors, the path, right? The human journey. And sometimes that journey can be looked at, the long road, the stellar, the stars really far away, or the depths of the oceans. So I would say, coming into this pose, taking it where you intelligently challenge yourself, and then softening in and stay for some time, maybe a minute, maybe up to 3, maybe up to 5 minutes, and really wash that energy through. So the next pose that we can work the urinary bladder system in, I'm going to just flip over onto my belly here. I'm going to widen my feet and legs to the width of my mat. And I'm going to take my elbows under the shoulders or just slightly ahead here into Sphinx pose here. And so here in Sphinx pose, the palms can be down. You can take prayer hands if you'd like. You could even hold opposite elbows here. And this really is going to work the urinary bladder meridian. 67 points. It's considered the superhighway of meridians, the only one that moves through the brain. Think of the urinary bladder meridian covering the entire back body. So literally from the center of the eyes up over the forehead, over the skull, down either side of the cervical spine, down either side of the entire spine, over the glutes, down the legs, and down into the pinky toes. So here, the spine just kind of drapes, and you'll begin to feel a compression in the lumbar spine, which is good. They always say you're as young as your spine here. And so it really brings a lot of vitality into the spine and tonification. So again, you can stay here in this pose. You can extend the elbows a little bit more forward in front of the shoulders if you feel as though the lumbar spine is compressing a bit too much for you. You can widen the legs even more here as well. And you can periodically engage the glutes and the lower abs if you really need to take tension out of that lumbar spine. So a Sphinx pose is a great pose to open up the watery chi. From here, let's just shift back into a child's pose for a moment. I'll keep my toes tucked. And then we'll pass our way right up into a downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And we'll go ahead and we'll come into a pigeon pose or sleeping swan in yin yoga. So this is a little bit more of a yang way to come into it. You can come into it from tabletop and just shift the shin forward. You can take a pause here if you really want to fire up Manipura chakra. And you're going to lower the right knee behind the right wrist. And the right ankle is going to end up aligning with the left hip point. So the left leg is going to shimmy on back. You can tuck the toes, lift the knee, and shimmy it back a little further. And then cast your gaze over the left shoulder, making sure the left foot, ankle, knee, and hip are in alignment here. And then according to how your hips are will determine where that right shin will be. So if you don't have a lot of flexibility, you may find the shin will be a little bit more in a diagonal position, the right heel coming more towards the perineum. If there is some opening to that hip, you may want to shift the shin a little bit more forward so it's parallel to the top of your mat. An important dynamic here for this pose is to make sure you shift the earth away. So you take the energy out of the front knee and into the outer hip here. And then again, you can stay high. You can use your block as a bench here for the sternum. You can use it here as a bench for your forearms, or there's an invitation to surrender down into the earth. So this is a wonderful asana to begin to open up the gallbladder chain. And think of the gallbladder as the complete side of the body. So it's really the outer edge of the eye, and it works its way down through the chest here. And then it kind of zigzags down along the hip and the outer part of the leg into the fourth toe. And you're going to get a bit of compression into the groin here, which will help with the liver meridian as well. Okay, so this will be a beautiful pose to take. Tucking out your left toes, we can swing back into our downward facing dog here and just gently pedal it out for a bit. And then of course we want to make sure we're paying attention to the opposite side and then floating our way down. So again, tucking out right toes, lift that right knee, extend the right leg back in this case, and then cast your gaze over the right shoulder, making sure that the foot is in alignment, taking up the chain all the way up to the hip. You don't want to sickle the toe or press it out. You want to keep everything in alignment. And so again, depending upon your hip, one side's always better than the other. Maybe that shin can open up, all right? This side's a little bit more open for me personally. And then you can take your point of where you want to be. Maybe your bench, maybe your sternum is supported, or maybe you'll take the block down to the third eye, or maybe you'll wash and get down into the earth as the pig gets really deep here. Good. So again, spending time in these poses is key. So we'll tuck out the right toes, we'll shift the hips up and pedal it out. So I want to give you one more pose here that's a little bit more yang as well. We'll lift up here through the left leg, and I'm going to take the left foot through, spiral the back foot down, and I'll circle up to warrior two here, okay? So in this pose we're going to come into is a side angle, extended. So Utthita Parsvakonasana pose here. I'm just going to grab my block here so we have it available, okay? And so in this pose here, you want to be very mindful that your front knee is over the front ankle. So in this case, I've got my left side here. And then be cognizant that the knee is projecting more towards the pinky side. So we'll say externally moving away from the body instead of rotating inward, okay? And then very important, the inner arch of your back foot is buoyant. Since we're going to work the gallbladder chain, really compress through that fourth toe, because that is where the gallbladder chain will ride all the way up the side of the body. So you have an option to take the left forearm to that quad. The right arm can spin up and then sweep it overhead, tuck left rib cage under the right. And so notice here the whole gallbladder chain begins to open here, revolving. If you want to take your hand down onto the block, feel the outer right knee, outer left hip moving back, sweeping around, gazing up. Beautiful. We'll sweep our way back up, take a pause. So notice that the whole gallbladder from that fourth toe riding all the way up the side of the body. It's a nice stretch. You get an IT band involved there too, the outer right hip in this case. The intercostal, so you're opening up the muscles to the rib cage, so there's more expansion for the lung. And then it'll ride its way right up to the corner of the eye there. Good. And the gallbladder is about discernment, making those good decisions. And that's where we're going, right? To get to our truest and greatest self. So we'll just finish out on the opposite side here. Let's pull this block around. Good. So we'll rotate the right foot 90, back foot's about 45. And so that right knee now, we want to keep it in conjunction with that right ankle, right? And a little bit of an exterior rotation there, external, right? And then we're going to get buoyant on the inner arch of that left foot and connect, especially to that fourth toe. So the option, forearm to the quad, sweeping the left arm up, right rib cage rotates underneath the left, the gaze following up. Maybe the hand comes down to the block, it can come down to the earth. I really don't care how deep you go in the pose, it's perfectly fine. And so here, I'm going to rise up and out. That whole left side of the chain of the gallbladder is awakening here. So very, very important that we just worked with water and wood. These are nourishing elements. And I've worked with the quality of the archetype animal of the pig, in which these elements are held within it. And so this is a whole process during this month of November that we're moving into that fullness of consciousness and the awareness in the process to be cognizant of moving through the challenges. You know, one of the things about this pose, Utthita Parsvakonasana, this right angle formation here reminds us or ignites the root base, Muladhara, or Ganesha. Ganesha is considered the removal of obstacles for those spiritual warriors. And so we're on that path, and part of that is Santosha. So finding contentment within the challenges to find joy on the other end, right? And Tapas, to have that fiery discipline, right? To move through, make right decisions so we can find our truest and greatest self. Beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed this little video session, and I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. Namaste.